Hello there, Kendra here as DM for Id Scape Games. I've been a dungeon master for ages and like to pass on some of my knowledge and experiences to help others join the crazy world of being the dungeon master. In the next few videos, we'll be diving into the three primary interaction types, or three pillars of TTRPGs as they're more commonly known these days. These are the social, exploration, and combat pillars. With this installment, we will focus on that first and most primary of pillars, the social aspect of role-playing. Now let's roll that intro and get started. Greetings DMs, players, murder hobos, and any others interested in learning about Dungeons & Dragons. Welcome to Id Scape Games Tips, Tricks, and Tutorials. Here we will discuss theories, ideas, and good practices for practical and fun DM use in the everyday D&D campaign. As always, I'll be sharing a lot of helpful information, but I want to hear from you. What are you interested in learning about? What challenges have you come across? Do you have any guidelines you use at your tables that might be helpful for others? Let's create a community support system so that we can bring out the best in the game. Check out the links to join our Discord server and feel free to hassle my players. Trust me, they love it. Especially puns. For Draho. Definitely Draho. Enough with the introductions, let's get to the meat of the session. It's early, now I'm hungry. It's a good thing that you and your party are sitting in the Sleepy Dwarf, a seedy tavern located in the Temple District of Ravensbluff. While the food isn't deplorable, its horrendous decor is only surpassed by the vileness of the ale that's served and the surliness of the dwarven proprietor of the establishment. He slides a mug of ale down the bar to each member of your party, and then steps to a middling point to view you all.
Adventurers, I reckon. Best look to the boards or find your way to the Adventurers Guild to get to work. Drinks ain't free these days.
Social encounters such as this scene are the primary pillar within all role-playing games. Social interactions can be a whole encounter or become part of exploration or combat. They are the primary building block of a great RPG. They can prompt the beginning of quests or provide you with much-needed information or allies. They also give you respite from the tedious math and lack of storyline that combat often provides. With this interaction type, you set your players up with the expectation of things to come. A good starting social encounter can be the spark that lights the way through the rest of the campaign. Whether it's as cliche as starting your players in a tavern, yes, we've all done it, we literally just did it in that scene, or something more interesting, such as a group suddenly teleporting into the presence of an archmage who has a quest that targets their unique skills. Creating unique scenarios will help your players dive further into the fantasy world, making it an experience rather than just a game. So let's dive into what makes a good socially interactive scene. As you saw with our earlier depiction, one should start out with a bit of narrative description of the area. By describing what your players see, smell, and can physically interact with, the game becomes more immersive. You want to keep these short, unlike some of my explanations, but flavorful. If you get too wordy, some of your players are likely to have their eyes glaze over or start fiddling around with whatever they may have nearby. Kind of like you're doing probably right now.
And your wife is.
My wife definitely is. 3 to 5 well-constructed sentences will do. Setting the scene is what we're accomplishing here. By keeping this short and incorporating the lead-in, not only do you keep your players' attention, but you provide them the opportunity to drive the next part of the social interaction. This is known as the call to action. That can be anything from what would they like to order, pointing them into the direction of adventure, or as simple as asking them what they've been up to. Depends on what the scene requires.
What you been up to?
All kinds of stuff! Speaking of call to action, so if you've made it this far, consider subscribing to receive notification of new tips and tricks videos, and the ever-crazy shenanigans of my weekly games. Now, back to that call to action. Players may respond to a call to action by chatting with the NPC, or asking probing questions about the NPC to gain a greater understanding of who that person is. Or if you look back at the first Arachnophobia tavern scene, my players chose to go in a completely off-the-wall direction compared to where they were directed when they started out in the tavern. Really nothing new there. They didn't even pay attention to some of the tavern patrons that were described. It's a good thing to be prepared for anything during social interactions, but it's also important to plan several paths. Having these set up in bullet point fashion is a great way to have the information handy that you might need. So, regarding our surly bartender, you might have something that looks like the following. Name.
Brindala Stoutarm.
Brindala is a dwarf fighter, level 5. She's seen some action. She retired from adventuring about 10 years ago after a run-in with a large bandit camp that ended her career adventuring with an arrow to the knee. Yeah, we gotta throw that in. She's heard many rumors that the Mages Guild is looking for some competent people to gather some information and some exotic material components. And she has the best drink this side of Faerun, Ike's Redbeard. Happens to have just a keg left and is selling it for a gold a pint.
Come get it.
We could continue listing things, but you get the point. Quick notes on what the NPC has to offer and the information that they're willing to share will easily get the players moving in the right direction. Sometimes they may even take note of one of the throwaway lines that you've given them and want to start questing in that fashion. What's that? You've only got a single keg left of Ike's red beard. Is it that hard to come by?
Normally no, but the shipments from Waterdeep have been slower and more infrequent lately.
And so on. Now, for newer DMs, you want to be a bit more careful if you tread down this path. Your players may now be inclined to take up the cause to see why these shipments have been more infrequent, and may even want to travel to Waterdeep to assist getting them back on schedule. While there is certainly nothing wrong with this, it could mean a whole lot of improv in your future. If you got the chops for this, or improv is your thing, then avenues such as this might be the way to go. Now, let's look at how social interactions come into play in the context of combat, both in pre-combat and during combat. Pre-combat first, after all, since it's pre-combat. The scene. The players have made their way into the dungeon of Milford the Mildly Evil. He's not a terrible guy, but he's done some pretty naughty things, and the party's here to make sure that he stops. How dare he steal all the belts from the townspeople? How will they keep their pants up? Tromping all the way through his little forest, they finally arrive to confront Milford. Bursting through the door to the final boss room, they find him sitting on a crushed red velvet throne, sipping a glass of Evermead. So, you've bested my guards, beaten your way through my monsters, and for what? I have no gold, no treasure for you to take, and I've done nothing illegal. Everything you've been told about has been lies. Slanderous, slanderous lies. In this instance, you get the option to do a few things. First and foremost is throwing your players the option of talking the BBEG down and bringing him in without a combat. A live capture allows for many offshoot scenes, or even turns him into a reoccurring villain, as he has several politicians and judges paid off and will never see the inside of a prison cell. Alternatively, the players may be dismissive of his claims, which, if he's speaking the truth, gives you the opportunity to use the callous disregard of peaceful resolution against them at a later time. Always, and I mean always, find a way to get the players to understand that their actions have consequences. Good, bad, ugly, beautiful. Consequences can be anything. But what they are truly is a world filled with life, thought, and amazing stories that will be remembered over the years as they look back on their favorite game sessions. Players who truly feel the gravity of their actions in the game world will want to delve back into it again and again, not only for those triumphant scenes, but also for those that are gut-wrenching, heart-stomping, and even those moments of abject sadness. Emotional connection is the key. Just ask my players. I use every opportunity to hit them in the feels.
Don't trust that guy.
Consequences not only help players to be more involved, but they also help their characters to evolve, one way or another. This has also been evident in several of the Arachnophobia games. Take a look at Lord Draho when we first began, and then watch our more recent episode. It's like night and day, and he's not even done evolving yet. Now, on to actual combat. All of D&D is a role-playing game, not just the standard social interaction scenes. And this can be most exemplified by taking combat in the same direction as you've seen in movies, read in books, or even thought about in prepping for your eventual combat encounters. You may even see that min-max power gamers become less inclined to power game by making combats more fun and refreshing in this way. For instance, back in the 2E days when we played in the RPGA, what would eventually become WotC's Adventurers League, we power gamed like there was no tomorrow. Combat was just something that we waded through in order to get back into the more interesting parts of roleplay. And it really wasn't until I sat down at a table with a truly epic DM and saw RP in combat that I really understood that the entire game was meant to be played that way. The dice are there to facilitate roleplay, not get in the way of roleplay. Really, this can be one of the most fun aspects of the game, but some ground rules really need to be laid out first. No long diatribes, we're in combat. Every round is only a scant few seconds long. Second, player retorts should be just as short, and generally from the player being actively talked to by whichever NPC they're specifically interacting with. Lastly, adding flair in the form of description during combat helps to add to the drama. These ground rules are crucial in order to avoid long, drawn-out scenes and whole lots of interruptions by players who aren't yet engaged. So, having exhausted the option to chat with Milford, combat is ensued. Several additional minions, captains of his guard, and personal bodyguards flank in from the side rooms, engaging the players individually. Rotaro the Red, a brutish hulk of an orc, moves in to swing on the party's paladin, unleashing a rage-filled war cry. Make the rolls, explain the damage or lack thereof, and give the players a chance to retort. They may just hurl their own war cry, or laugh and taunt Rotaro in another fashion. Really, anything under the sun. Yalix the Yellow takes aim at the party's rogue with his wand saying, "I've never missed a thief in my life." unleashing a volley of magic missiles. Streaks of blue fire off from the wand, striking the rogue for X amount of damage. The rogue then retorts,
I am no thief, and you are no mage.
Allowing for this back and forth between the players and the NPCs gives multiple benefits. First off, if you can make your quips while making the rolls for attack and damage, it cuts down on the monotony that is just throwing dice at a problem. Second, it makes the players more immersed in the story of the combat, rather than relegating it to a tactical minigame to be used between other portions of the game. Finally, you will likely see the players want to do more unique and interesting things than, I hit it with my sword, I cast Fireball. For this aspect to work though, you really need to look at the planning of your combat scenes and giving that little extra touch of inspiration. But we'll explore that in our next video. So if you want to make sure to stay up to date on ways to improve your game sessions as a DM, make sure to hit that subscribe, follow, or whatever button is most appropriate somewhere on this page. Verify all notifications are turned on, give us a like or comment if you've gotten this far. Thanks for watching, and remember, get creative. Now where did our mascot sneak off to?